Hello and welcome everyone, this is Calebovitsch coming to you with another episode of Deck Check. Today I will be giving a longer intro because this is going to be a story about what I think about the current Throne format and my approach to the Spring Championships that took place this weekend. It is the 16th, 17th of May 2020. So there were a couple of changes in the last 2 weeks for the Throne format, and that is the release of Shadows of the Spire mini expansion and a round of buffs and nerfs, or rather nerfs and buffs to some cards. Now this took place in the last 2 weeks, and that shook up the Throne metagame by a lot. I mean, 2 weeks ago there was an ECQ in Throne, and right now we have Spring Championships, and the metagame right now is very wide open. And how to approach such a wide metagame? Well, I'm gonna tell you about the deck that I have chosen for the Spring Championships. A deck that took me to 10 wins and 5 losses without any buys. So that is the 2/3 win percentage, which is kind of good, but it was unfortunately lacking. I was very low on tiebreakers and I ended up 70th. Number 70, that is. So yeah, I was several places short of the cut to top 64. That's unfortunate. Some other people with 10-5 made it. I didn't. That doesn't change the fact that the deck I took to the Spring Championships is one that is very cool, and I'm going to show it to you right now. So this is a deck that I took to the Spring Championships. This is a Feln deck. But this is very different from the Feln deck I played 2 weeks ago at the ECQ. That one was straight out Feln Mill, the Savage Broker deck, if you like. That was the topic of one of the previous deck checks as well, with a small tune-up. Well, a couple of things. I mean, the deck was working great, but the latest mini expansion, Shadows of the Spire, introduced several cards that made me wonder a bit whether it is good to play that deck right now, because that deck was all in on 2 cards. It was all in on Savage Broker, which was a unit, and it was all in on Strange Broker, and all in on Savage Incursion, which is a spell. And if you've seen the coverage of the ECQ, I was blown out. It was top 16, I believe, by being played Rain of Frogs on my Savage Incursion, which just gutted my main win condition. That was very unfortunate. And right now, with the introduction of a card called Turn to Seed, that is a 3-cost double primal spell, choose an enemy unit, transform it and each enemy copy into 0/2 seeds, including from their hand, deck, and void. Previously, such cards either worked just hand and deck, or just a deck, or just play and no void, etc. So you could recurse some of the ones that have been lost to removal, or did not introduce additional copies that were in play. But Turn to Seed actually guts each copy, and with current markets being the old black markets, which means you can't have a copy of a card both main deck and in the market, so this would help avoid being turned to seed. So if this hits Savage Broker, Strange Broker, you're just in for a very bad time. So all of that made me question my choice of playing Feln Mill again, but Feln in and of itself did receive several cool cards. I mean, Turn to Seed is one of them, and if you can't beat them, join them, as I came to learn, well, in a grueling experience throughout all the years playing Magic the Gathering. If something is just too good, well, why not play it yourself? Anyway, another card that has been introduced in the latest mini expansion is Ikaria First Reaper, aka Zikaria from Zombie Ikaria, because she looks like a Nightmare Valkyrie, and she is a Nightmare Valkyrie. It is a 6-cost, 6 Shadow Influence required, 5/5 Nightmare Valkyrie with Flying and Deadly. On summon, it kills an enemy unit or site, and it has a devastating Entomb effect as well, that the enemy player discards each spell from their hand. So this is devastating both against aggro. Well, against aggro, low to the ground aggro maybe not as much because they want to go wide on the board. But against mid-range it just shines because it kills a threat and is a threat in and of itself. And against control decks, well, it is a threat with the additional dying threat of Entomb. The enemy player discards each spell from their hand, and that is also very, very devastating, or at least it could be, unless the opponent has Face Aegis. So having these two cards made me want to experiment with a Feln deck that is very shadow based. And the current power system and or influence system, or just the power cards that we have in the Throne format, allow just that. They allow playing a two-faction deck that is very heavy, like 100% or 95% heavy on one of the factions, and is also very heavy, like 3/4 or 2/3 in the other faction. And you can see it here in the power base. We are running 16 dual powers. This is 4 seats, 4 insignias, 4 banners, and 4 crests. But the additional sources are all shadow. I'm not even running a single primal sigil. So even if someone casts an Ice Bolt, I will have none of that. My primal cards have 1 or 2 primal influence, but that shouldn't be a problem in this deck more often than not. In the ECQ, I did lose 1 game because I did not have a second primal, but that was just my bad decision on redrawing cards. I should have redrawn to a hand that included more than a dual and just a shadow sigil. So there is that. And this power base also allows you to play just like Mono Shadow, or almost just like Mono Shadow, with some of the sources coming into play depleted more often than not. That is the main difference. But aside from that, it allows you to run cards like Tazbu the Forbidden, the 5-cost 5 shadow requirement, and Deadly Warp Radiant, that when one of your units dies, you get to draw a card and you take 1 damage, including Tazbu, unless he gets turned to Seed or Silence or something like that. But other than that, it provides a ton of card advantage. So you can be running 3 costs that have triple shadow requirement, 5 costs that have 5 shadow requirement, 6 costs that have 6 shadow requirement, because for each power that you play, you for sure have 1 shadow influence coming alongside with it. And there is also another thing that made me want to try this deck list out, and that is the recent buff to Midnight Gale. This card has not seen any play from what I've seen for the longest of times, and I've been playing this game for more than a year and a half now. This used to be a 3-cost double Feln 4/3 flyer that had Infiltrate Midnight Gale gets Life Seal when this hits the enemy player for the first time. But in the recent nerf and buff patch, it has been buffed to a 4/4. What that means is that it dodges most of the problematic cards in the game right now, problematic as in removal, and that is, this dodges Torch, it dodges Seer, it dodges Blazing Salvo, but it used to anyway, but it also dodges Hailstorm, and you can play Hailstorm in a deck with Midnight Gale. So on turn 3 you can play Midnight Gale to stop the opposing forces, and then when the opponent goes wide on the board trying to race against Midnight Gale, you just Hailstorm them to oblivion, and that started to be the base of the deck. I consulted on this deck list with none other than Popotito as well, the runner-up in 2019 Eternal World Championships, if in case you don't know who that is. He said he wants to be running big shadow units that don't die to Hailstorm, and that has become the theme of this deck. I mean, the version he ran in the Spring Championships differs from mine a bit, in like 5 to 10 cards from what I remember. I would have to check that up. And he did manage to get into day 2, but as far as me recording this, that's the extent of the information I have on his run. So anyway, these are the cards that influenced me to try and build such a deck. But when it comes to the metagame of the Throne format, it is not anymore just even decks, just even-handed golem decks, because that card has been slightly nerfed from a 2/2 to a 1/1. This is not only Vox decks, because some of the Vox cards were nerfed as well. So the metagame right now is wider, and people have been trying to trying to come up with a solution to the format. But given that there was no main deck anymore, people were just going as fast as really low to the ground aggro and as high as unitless Huru or unitless Ixen controls, or somewhere in between with some combo decks or some mill decks. So the metagame was really wide when I played those 15 matches, and in the on the ladder preceding that. So what I wanted to do for such a metagame is come up with a deck that has responses to both the low end and the top end of the metagame. So for both aggro and for control. And well, against aggro, this deck just wants to put out bigger threats and clear the board. And against control, so against aggro you are playing the more mid-range control, but against control you're playing the more aggro mid-range with an emphasis on mid-range because, well, you don't have any true 2-drops in this deck. Also, the inclusion of 4 copies of Strategize in this deck allows you to play a deck that has some of its cards work really good against control, and some of these cards work really good against aggro. And I've learned this while playing my Savage Broker deck. That was also in the beginning it was not running any Strategizes, but it turns out this has become one of my favorite cards in a Feln mid-range-ish deck, because if you have plans for both aggro and control, then, well, you don't want to sit with a handful of hailstorms against control or a handful of late drops against aggro, and you don't want to miss power drops as well. So this is your perfect filtering for the hand. This does not produce any card advantage in theory, because you get to play a card, to draw 2 cards and put one of your cards on the bottom of your deck. So if you're not creating additional copies of cards, such as with Jotun Hurler, Zoe, the Endless Horde, or some echo spells like Herald Song, or I've even seen Unstable Form being played in Feln decks recently, just for having an additional copy of a card. But the filtering this provides is just perfect, because it throws usually a card that does nothing to the bottom of your deck. So there is that. But be wary of throwing Shadow Sigils to the bottom of your deck, because, well, you can just grab them with Vara's Favor. So if you already have at least 2 primal sources, usually and you want to throw power to the bottom of your deck, usually throw one of the duels and keep the Shadow Sigils. Anyway, so this wants to go with bigger units than aggro, and wants to have as much card advantage as possible against control. And, well, let me just read you the deck list. So when it comes to units, we are running 19, but in reality 22. We have 4 copies of Blightmoth, and this is one of the best answers to low to the ground aggro. This is a 2-cost double shadow 1/2 flying Kirin that on summon gives an enemy unit and each enemy that shares a type with it -1 or -1, and has corrupted 3, which means then when it dies, it produces a Blightmoth Shade. That allows you to pay 3, sacrifice the Shade, and redo the effect. So this gets rid of all the Yetis, all the Grenadin, shrinks a lot of other units as well. But this also can be used as a double fog effect, which means it can block a unit, and then the Shade can block a unit as well. And that allows you to stay in the game. Next up, we have 4 copies of Midnight Gale, the new incarnation that doesn't die to torches nor hailstorms. And this is really one of the cards that you want to play on turn 3 for sure. 4 copies of Rindra the Duskblade, the 4-cost double Feln Elf Unseen. On summon, it makes night fall. And, well, if... for those of you who don't remember night, when it is night, it is night on your turn, the opponent's turn, and your turn as well. And when you start your turn at night, you draw an extra card and you take 1 damage. And Nightfall Lethal is one of the best lethal modes of the game, obviously. I mean, not the game modes, the game endings. And Rindra has Lifesteal and Overwhelm at night. This card seems like the perfect addition to a mid-range Feln deck, and it has been more often than not. But I have to be honest that the Nightfall effects against fire-based aggressive decks was my downfall a couple of times. And for example, Popatito told me later that he threw Rindras out of the deck list and instead played the newest era mods, the promo cards, the 4-cost for Shadow Influence 3/5 flyer with Deadly. That enchants the opponent when it hits them. But yeah, Rindra on the surface is very good because, well, it produces you with a 5/5 that does not die to a lot of removal. It dodges Annihilate as well, for example. And well, it allows you to redraw a card later as well. 4 copies of Tazbut the Forbidden, this huge Radiant. Well, if you can warp it on turn 5, then you're for a huge card advantage because you have played a card that you did not need to draw, which is 0 for 1, or 1 for 0 rather. And then if it dies, the opponent had to use up a card and you get to redraw a card anyway. Also, this is very good with Blight Moths being really small units, and also the Shades being additional units that sooner or later just die. Just 3 copies of Zikaria, First Reaper, because you don't want to have too many in your opening hand. And this deck does have a lot of card draw, so if you need it, you're probably going to draw into it. And as you can see in this deck list right now, I was running a lot of 2 offs and 3 offs because of the plethora of draw effects in Strategizes and Wisdom of the Elders, and some Nightfall effects as well. Honorary unit mention goes to 3 copies of Marionette Cross, and this was another perfect card against aggro, more often than not. A 3-cost triple Shadow Relic that on summon you get to play a 5/5 Marionette, and on Entomb you get to sacrifice each Marionette, but also the Marionette, when it dies, makes you sacrifice each Marionette Cross. So this makes you not want to run multiple copies of a Marionette Cross, because, well, if one cross dies, each Marionette dies and the other way around. This deck, fortunately, does have some shifty ways of giving you face Aegis, which combats opponents just trying to get rid of Marionette Cross, and you are going to see one such instance in one of the games I'm going to show you later. Well, I would not risk running 4 of this, but, well, that is also kind of an option. Next up we have the top end of the deck, 2 copies of Dizzo's Office, the 7-cost double Shadow Sight. That says your units have Life Seal, which is the perfect last nail to the coffin against aggro, but also produces you with card advantage again. Gives you card advantage against control decks. You get to play Scheme, Threaten, Cut Ties, so this allows you to kill a unit, to draw a card, to make one of your units bigger, and later it plays Dizzo Cabal Chairman, 4/6 with unblockable, and then when you summon another unit, when Dizzo comes into play, you can create and draw a Cabal Extortion Scheme, a 3-cost slow spell that when you play it, it gives your opponent a choice. Either they take 7 damage and you gain 7 health, or you take 3 top cards of their deck. Both modes are very good, I have to say. So this is your top end, and only 2 copies because you don't want to have multiples in your hand. Now when it comes to spells, you can go higher or lower on some of these, but this is the list I ended up with. And it has the signature Popatito 2 copies of Swift Refusal main deck. This is the 1-cost primal fast spell that negates an enemy spell that isn't fast. And this is really perfect for the current metagame because this stops Turn to Seed, like seemingly the perfect answer to the huge units in this deck. But it also stops some one-off harsh rules that, well, it allows you to attack for lethal more often than not, but also stops card draw like Honor of Claws, and stops other and some burn spells as well. So this really has a lot of uses, and, well, in the end you can just get it to your market with Transpose, or put it on the bottom of your deck with Strategize if you end up drawing it against low to the ground aggro with no spells. So there is that. Next up, 3 copies of Transpose. This is your market source of choice, and this is a very tricky one. This is a 1-cost fast primal spell that says deal 2 damage to the enemy player, which also means you get to get rid of face Aegis on the enemy player if they have it. You gain an Aegis, but also you may swap a card from your hand with a 4-cost card in your market. This used to just deal 1 damage to the enemy player. Obviously, when it deals 2 damage to them, it is twice as good, but not really. But it is one of the trickier cards you can be playing these days, because Getting rid of your opponent's face Aegis is very good with effects such as Icaria First Reaper or Silverblade Menace or Burglarize. And B, getting Aegis to yourself on fast speed allows you to combat cards such as Rain of Frogs, such as Turn to Seed in a way as well, because if someone plays Turn to Seed on one of your units and you have face Aegis, your unit gets transformed, your face Aegis evaporates, and the additional copies of those cards in your hand, deck, and void do not get transformed. So there is that as well. I was not running 4 copies of this because in and of itself this spell does not do that much, and 3 copies should be usually enough, and I'll get to the market later. 4 copies of Strategize, I've already talked about this card. 3 copies of Vara's Favor instead of, for example, Seek Power. Well, especially given the fact that I'm only running Shadow Sigils when it comes to Sigils in this deck. A 2-cost Shadow spell that deals 1 damage, has Lifesteal, and draws a Shadow Sigil from your deck. But you have to remember, in all the decks that gain you health, you got to remember that Milos Rebel Bomber grows when you gain health. And, well, I've seen time and time again, for example, people trying to Vara's Favor or condemn Milos when he was almost dead, and well, that just doesn't work, so you have to remember about that. Also, these are power sources 26 through 28, and in a mid-range control deck, well, that is what you want to have, more than 25 power for sure. Just 3 copies of Hailstorm, the 3-cost double primal spell that deals 3 damage to each unit. I used to run 4 copies, but with the metagame being cut in half between aggro and control decks, well, you just don't want to be stuck with them in the wrong matchup. And also you're running a Hailstorm-like card in the market, so you have 3 more copies of that as well with Transpose. Instead, I opted to run a 4th copy of Turn to Seed because this was either 4 Hailstorms, 3 Turn to Seeds, or the other way around. I opted to go the other way around because this is really a powerful card. I don't think it should be. It is OP, overpowered in any way, but it is just one of the better answers that Primal has with transform all cards from the opponent like this. We have Royal Decree, we have Rain of Frogs, we have similar cards, so this is currently Primal's power, and one of the reasons I'm running this deck. And last but not least, we have 4 copies of Wisdom of the Elders, the 3-cost double primal fast spell that draws you 2 cards. This deck could also be running, instead of Wisdom of the Elders, I remember I was testing either this or Honor of Claws, but in the end I'm playing 4 copies of this main deck because 1 copy of Honor of Claws is in the market because Honor of Claws is a 4-cost spell. Plain and simple. As far as power base goes, we need to have some Shadow Sigils for sure because of A, Vara's Favor, and B, Seeds of Cunning. And you want to be running Seeds of Cunning and all the duels because, well, of how this deck is made with both Icaria, Tazbu, and double primal requirements. So there is that, but I also wanted to include at least some Amethyst Waystones because they give you Nightfall, which is beneficial for Rindra, draws you and your opponent a card, but also deals 1 damage to the opponent. So all the beneficial effects, but if you run into too many fire-based aggro decks, you just might want to cut them and just play 9 Shadow Sigils. As far as the market goes, I am quite happy with this one because you have, well, literally all that you need here with those transposes. You can grab Burglarize. So finally, the expensiveness of Burglarize comes in very handy. 4 cost, well, all of these are going to be 4 cost. Double Shadow spell that gets Nightfall, which means it's going to deal some damage, draw some cards as well. But you get to steal an enemy relic and put it into your hand. And, well, you can remember, if you steal a relic weapon, all of the armor goes away from your opponent with it. So, yeah, this is one of the... I think this is really one of the few ways that Shadow can get rid of relics, so you just usually have to run these. 1 copy of Honor of Claws. This is a very good card if you're running empty and you want to refill your hand, but this when you get it with Transpose, this is not card advantage because you're playing Transpose, you're sacrificing a card to get Honor of Claws, and you're playing that Honor of Claws, and you're discarding a card in the end, so 3 cards cost to draw 3 cards, so this is like more like filtering like with Strategize than real card draw, but well, it is really necessary here, especially if you start with too much power and you keep getting flooded. because then you turn one of those powers into Honor of Claws and turn the other one into the discarded card. One copy of In Cold Blood, a double shadow spell that kills an enemy unit. If that unit was of the Justice influence, the enemy player discards each copy from their hand and deck. They get void bound, but you also get to lose all Justice influence. And you gotta remember that you lose all Justice influence is only tied to the fact whether the unit was Justice or not. If it was a non-Justice unit, you don't lose any Justice influence, but this is not the problem for this deck because we are not running any Justice, and this is your last chance for Justice. For Icaria! Now being a zombie. In the place of In Cold Blood, you could also be running a card that is called Nullblade, but in the end I opted to just go for this against some mid-range Justice-based decks. One copy of Malediction, the double shadow slow spell that says each unit gets -3/-3 this turn. These are your Hailstorms 4 through 6, and this is really necessary in the market. The last and certainly not least card that is necessary in the market. I used to run 3 of these main deck, but in the end just one in the market is really fine if you're running 3 ways of getting it from the market. Silverblade Menace is one of my favorite cards from Shadow of the Spire, a 4-cost double shadow 3/3 flyer, a Nightmare Valkyrie, that says summon, deal damage to the enemy player equal to the number of spells in their void, and you gain that much health. So this is your perfect finisher against control decks, especially that control decks usually run Primal, run a lot of Face Aegis, etc, etc. So what you do, you play Transpose, you try to ping them for 2, but they just lose Face Aegis, you grab Silverblade Menace, and then Silverblade Menace can just finish them off. And you're probably going to see that in at least one of the games that I'm going to show you. So this is the deck in its form. There have been other Fel mid decks being played out there for sure. Some running, for example, Mother of Sky, some running Unstable Form, some being Mill, etc, etc. This was supposed to be my answer to the metagame that fell a bit short, but it is still a very good deck and one that I enjoyed playing. So right now I am going to show you several games, and these are the games from the Spring Championships. So yeah, just sit back and enjoy the ride. And here's the first match that I'm gonna show you out of 4. And this is against Thalion, who we're gonna see in a moment is playing Huru Control. And this hand is could be better, but it does have the Feln Crest and has a Strategize, which means we are looking way deeper into the deck. And even if we don't get a second blue source, but just a third shadow source, we still have a turn 3 Marionette Cross to play. So Seed of Cunning is an obvious inclusion here, and I will probably play Seed of Cunning on turn 2 instead of the Amethyst Waystone, so that I can safely go for the cross on 3. Opponent is on Crest into Standard, into the blue Standard, which solidifies at this point my thinking of, yes, they are on heavy Huru or Ixen control, probably Huru. And, well, that will just mean that Strategize is going to put a Permafrost or a Hailstorm on the bottom of our deck. Now, opponent is going at it rather slow, so yeah, we're just gonna have to wait a bit and see what they are planning. But the general thought of this matchup is that we have to keep putting pressure onto the board, but usually not more than 2 units unless we have some sort of protection against a harsh rule, such as Swift Refusal. Other than that, if we put more than 2 threats on the board, they can just wipe us clean. So yes, they are playing the Merchant, and we did draw a Sigil, and that means I can go Permafrost and Hailstorm, using up 2 cards to kill that. But at least if the opponent went for example, Turn to Seed. Turn to Seed is an even better option, but this has been a mistake. What I did here, if I wanted to turn to Seed, I should have attacked first because they wouldn't block, and here just a Seed, they might want to think about blocking that. Now, what the opponent did right now really was really strange for me, because turning that Marionette Cross into an Omen of Austerity means that okay, I cannot play my other 2 Marionette Crosses but the Marionette is still in play because that was a transform, that was not an Entomb effect. But the opponent rectifies their situation by turning our Marionette into a seed, so to say. Now, we have some strategizes, which means I will be able to pick and choose what I get to draw here. One of those cards is a Marionette Cross, so it has to go to the bottom of the deck because it's literally unplayable right now. And I don't believe I would like to go for something like Burglarize specifically to get rid of that Omen just to have a 5/5. I'd rather just put one of the two cards that I cannot play to the bottom of my deck. Opponent is going off with Honor of Claws, netting them some card advantage. And we do have the Seed that is going to come online in several turns, but that usually is not a thing. Although, you still have to remember that little seeds can be deadly later on. Like this little seed versus little seed violence. This also means that the opponent already had 3 of those. I mean, come on, what are the odds of that happening? Now, Vara's Favor is another good way of getting rid of an Aegis on the opponent. And right now, when we're getting those, when we're drawing those power, I don't want to put Shadow Sigil on the bottom of the deck because we can just grab it at random with Vara's Favor, and that's not what I want to be doing here, just decreasing the probability of grabbing one from the top of my deck, not the one from the bottom. And obviously going for Crest, and we don't need Hailstorm, and I am behind on this commentary, but maybe it will be slightly better in a moment or two. Swift Refusal could be an option quite soon indeed. I am a couple of turns ahead on growing the seed, but the opponent is going so super fast into card advantage. This is just mind-boggling. I can just hope that they are that they have a ton of Defiances and cards like that they won't be using anytime soon. Yeah, I believe we can grab the Sigil to the bottom now, because I mean even a Permafrost and a Hailstorm can be used. Nightfall does mean that the opponent will draw their additional card first, but this is just because we need to draw a card as well. A couple of ways on protecting their Svethia's Sanctum. So right now I would need to get a Transpose, and against control decks, Transpose should usually go for a Silverwing Menace, Silver Blade Menace. But in this case, I saw that it is not providing me with lethal yet. So instead, I opted to go for Hailstorm, killing that little seed and that 2/2, for Transpose getting rid of their face Aegis, taking a Shadow Sigil out to market, and getting a Burglarize to steal their Svethia's Sanctum, so that we now can start using our spells to our biggest advantage. So this was Burglarize instead of Silver Blade Menace, and I stand by this choice, even though we only have 2 Transposes left in the deck somewhere. I mean, Svethia's Sanctum is still a win condition, and we have power up enough for the Swift Refusal. Unfortunately, opponent is playing Stormhold Knife, which is also one of their win conditions right here, right now. And we have Icaria First Reaper. But the problem with Icaria is that although it is a good card, the opponent can just does have face Aegis. So yeah, we're not even if they kill it, they just lose the Aegis and they don't lose any spells. So we have to do better than that. And that is where this Wisdom of the Elders comes in handy, hopefully, drawing us some cool stuff. And getting a 3/3. And this Transpose is quite close to perfect as it gets. Because I have a plan, I have a very dastardly plan of playing Icaria First Reaper. And now opponent is probably going to want to kill Icaria. But we have something in response, because in response we're going to play Transpose, get face Aegis off of them, take away Permafrost to grab Silver Blade Menace for the finisher, and Icaria is going to die, and we will get rid of some spells from their hand, which is a huge bonus, and hopefully something the opponent was not anticipating. Well, Hailstorm and Clan Tactic are not the best cards to pick, but, well, yeah, sure, they are still at least some cards. They do have another Svetja's Sanctum, but they have max 1 spell in hand, and that is good to know. I mean, they could have only drawn 1. And there's a Permafrost, which doesn't hurt us that much. And right now I was thinking of just going for Tazbu instead of going for Silverblade Menace, because I want to keep the Silverblade Menace as the total finisher, right? And if the opponent wants to Harsh Rule, if they top-decked one, we do have Swift Refusal. That is also producing a 1/1 for us. So there is that. So this is the usual hell no. But the opponent is very persistent and plays Permafrost on our 6/6 anyway, killing the 1/1 that we created with Swift Refusal on Svetja's Sanctum. And here, a very interesting couple of plays as well. We can Ikaria away their token because we're not killing them with Silverblade Menace yet. And we can also play Rindra at the Duskblade, which triggers Nightfall, and with opponent's relic weapon being on just 1 armor, it is just getting destroyed. So yeah, now they need another to have top-decked another Harsh Rule or End of the Story. End of the Story, yes. And even then we are drawing 4 cards and getting rid of some things from the opponent's hand, hopefully. Our Face Aegis got popped, which means the remaining Ikaria in our deck is going to remain an Ikaria. And here we're just attacking. Opponent's probably going to do something nasty here. And they are making a unit as well. We're playing a Sigil, we are drawing a card thanks to Tazbu, and right now we can just go for Silverblade Menace for 14 to finish the opponent off. Cool, huh? Alright, on to game number 2. In the second game from the Spring Championships I'm going to show you, I'm playing against Smedanik, who is on Feln midrange. And, well, yeah, 1 power hands are just a no-go. And this, well, I don't know what the opponent has, but it still holds 4 power and a strategize that's going to help us dig deeper into the deck, probably sending Dizzo's Office to the bottom. But that's also going to depend on what we will draw in the meantime. And, well, fun thing, I opted to play Insignia before Seed of Cunning because, well, I did have a mental fail several times of playing a depleted Insignia after the opponent put a Firebomb in my deck, so I don't want to do that again. And here I opted to get I was greedy, okay? If I know I am playing a mirror, I went for full total greed. And just kept both Dizzo's Office and Transpose because I suppose these are the best cards I could have here. And this is where the greed comes in once again. I could either put a Sigil on the bottom or a Strategize. And with me being able to play 5, 6, and 7, I could also just pick Hailstorm. Yeah, that's the best option because, well, as I said in the introduction, Feln Mid is a deck made specifically to not die for their units, not to die to Hailstorm. Now, Royal Decree with Onslaught, this is where Transpose comes in very handy because we're getting a Face Aegis and we're ditching Strategize to grab probably Unearth Claws because we don't have anything to play on turn 4 yet, at least, unless we draw something. Well, there's a Midnight Gale, and we can also go for Amethyst Waystone to draw a card off of Nightfall next turn. Now, what will the opponent do here? Aramot Mind Splitter, yes, that card could be a problem, but on turn 6 we are getting our Ikaria out. So here I opted just to think about chump blocking with the 4/4, and, well, we also have Tazbu, so we're going to redraw a card. Tazbu is getting turned to Seed, no matter. But the strange thing is, opponent decided not to attack, which was, well, I was very glad that happened, because I have a clean kill on Aramot and I can attack for 4 with the Gale. giving it life steal as well. I mean, life does not matter as much in this matchup as in others, because you just have to win it. Well, sure. Here I went for something slightly more interesting. I went for no, I thought I went for threaten first. But no, I thought about it and decided to threaten the little seed, so we are splitting the damage across the board. Opponent is going for Wisdom of the Elders, sure. And next turn we can either go for Threaten or for Scheme, depending on what we want to do. And we have a ton of card draw in hand and some threats on the board, so we are right now on the winning side of this, but well, things could change. And well, here I thought they would be killing my Icaria, but instead they are killing the site. You gotta remember, Icaria can kill sites as well. Here I want to go for Icaria v Icaria Violence. I discarded a little seed, but I should have discarded one of the crests. Here we have a Dizzo's Office, which is cool. I think I should have attacked first and then played this card, but with only Vara's favor to be lost, I opted just to go for it here and wanted to trade. Losing the Vara's favor, I don't know how many cards the opponent could lose, 0 to 4. Turns out they didn't want to do that. Defiling the little seed, yes, sure, why not? Playing Ice Bolt on our Icaria, so they are probably not gonna lose any cards from their hand. Or at least not a lot. Okay, that's how the opponent plans it out. And we can go one to the face and go Dizzo's Office, killing the Icaria. Yes, killing the Icarias, and we don't have to discard anything. And we can even play the Crest to scout for something. Sure. Marionette Cross. I thought of putting it on the bottom of the deck, but this is another threat and the opponent is down to 7 health. So yeah, I mean, next turn we can Rindra and do that, while also going for the thing that we go for. But in the end, it turns out that Scheme just gives us Transpose for lethal, because we're grabbing Transpose, playing it, grabbing Silverblade Menace. Now as well we know the opponent doesn't have any stops. No Aegis in play whatsoever because of Vara, and that is once again Silverblade Menace lethal. Alright, now on to game number 3. Our third opponent in the Spring Championship was Golens, playing a very cool brew of Time Justice Primal, now also known as Tradition, with Alessi, Crownwatch Press Gang into Alessi, and a lot of cool spells and tricks. And this hand would have been a keep if I could play one of my card draws on turn 2, but I could not have done that. And this one is Crest of Cunning, looking for power, into Strategize, looking for power. We have a second Strategize if something is amiss. Turn to Seed needs to get turned down to the bottom of the deck, unfortunately, because, well, Turn to Seed is the best removal spell in the deck altogether. Opponent going for Elysian, and at this point I remember I had no idea what the opponent was going for. And here I went to grab just one of these power cards to the bottom of the deck, because right now this hand consists of only 2s and 3s, so I'm guessing 3 power should be enough, especially that we have another Strategize, another Wisdom of the Elders to play out. Yeah, this one was looking strange, and I opted to search for another power. I mean, at 4 now we can still once again put another power to the bottom. Shadow Sigil to the top, so I know that we have something coming into play not depleted. Opponent with the Tradition Chant. A very non-traditional card. Seeing play in Throne. Into a Primal Sigil, attacking for 3. We see a stop there. So here, yeah, it's just Midnight Gale. I could go for Hailstorm, but given the opponent did have a stop, I opted to just go for a Midnight Gale. and Alessi, which also means the opponent wants to attack and make the fullest benefit of a trick they have in hand by growing Alessi. So I went for the click and dodge, and just didn't block there. I mean, the opponent would get their power anyway. Instead, the next turn is going to be very interesting for us. When it comes to the next turn, obviously. And Midnight Gale is gonna help us race, for sure, as well. But first, let's play Blightmoth on Alessi to see if and what tricks they have right now. Now the thing is, the opponent is going to respond with a card I was not expecting, and that is Perul's Choice, giving one of their units +1/+1 in Aegis. And they gave +1/+1 in Aegis to Alessi instead of giving it to the Longhorn. If they knew what I had in hand, they would have done it differently, because right now if they don't have any spells in hand, I'm just gonna wipe their board clean with a Hailstorm. I know we are losing the Blightmoth, but I care not. Also, when I attacked with Midnight Gale, I saw the opponent did not have any stops for a Finest Hour or anything like that. Now they are going for a Crown Notch Press Gang, and I have a couple of options. I can turn that to Seed, or go Transpose, grab an In Cold Blood from the market, but I don't have anything to throw away, so I'd rather go for Turn to Seed, attack and Turn to Seed on their card advantage engine, because that is their best source of card advantage. I could also try going for Wisdom of the Elders, going for a non-depleted power source, but that is a slight gamble, because, well, I can draw something that is either not a power or a depleted power source, and then, well, they can start attacking me. And they are supposed to be the aggro, and I am supposed to go better than them. Bigger units, etc., etc. So right now, this is going to be another attack. Let's fight. I want to play Wisdom of the Elders main phase, because I want to draw my power and play power on 6, power on 7. It was not to be, so it is a Permafrost on the Longhorny. Into Perul's Choice, giving their unit +1/+1 in Aegis, sure. So they do have a 4/4 without the Aegis. That got popped. Pop. Sure, we're taking 4. They are not into Mastery yet. Pearl Abbey Smuggler, sure. And what else? Alessi Cambrai Archmage without any power left. So I was thinking that I can transpose and go for Malediction, but that could happen if I just draw power, for example. But instead I drew another Blightmoth, so I opted to attack for 4. Play Blightmoth on the Smuggler, Blightmoth on Alessi, making their board slightly less problematic for us. We also have Transpose, dealing 2 damage to the opponent into Silverblade Menace once again for the remaining points of health. They don't have that many spells in their void yet. I remember at least 3, the Chant and 2 Perul's Choices, so that is 5 total on Transpose with Menace. So if they don't have any responses to our 4/4 and the 1/2s, we should be good. But I remember they do have a response, and that is going to be, spoiler alert, a Pristine Light getting played now. Or rather, after playing Alessi, so that Alessi can grow. So yeah, the Gale dies, but our hopes do not die with it. They also received 1 armor because of Alessi. And right now I'm thinking of what to go for. I could go for Transpose into Malediction, for example, but I opted not to do that. Instead, Crest of Cunning, going for another Seat, but that one to the bottom. I don't care if that one comes into play depleted. I either want a power that comes into play ready, or just an actionable card. And they are going for Kroviat Palace, which is a strange top end, because that costs a lot more than the other cards they have in their deck. So I remember that was very curious for me. And they are attacking us for 10. and Menace deals 5, Transpose deals 2, that's 7. Those Blight Moths deal 2 more, so we are still 1 short. And the best card I could draw here is Amethyst Waystone. Or Vara's Favor, because that turns the power on as well. So that is the remaining point of damage. So that is pinging them for 1. I was just double checking and triple checking my math here. So I'm gonna play a power, play Transpose, get them down to 5, and play Silverblade Menace for the 3rd time, dealing lethal in a Spring Championship match. And this is going to be it for this game. On to the last game. I'm going to show you game number 4. And this was actually the last game I played in the Spring Championship Throne Edition against Cows Go Moo. Not to be confused with Cows Go Moo. And this is almost a perfect hand. I mean, we have a 2, we have a 3, we have 4 power, so Tazbo is going to come into play quite soon. We have a Transpose, but we cannot play Transpose on turn 1. Because, well, we don't have anything to throw away. And this time I opted to start with the Seed, and that was a slight mistake because the opponent can start with a Fire Sigil and light the fuse. So here, in this case, I should have opened with Felon Insignia, and I thought whether to go for Vara's Favor right now or not, and in the end I opted to go for it, because I want to play something on turn 3, and I want to play a power on turn 4. Maybe I draw a Rindra or something like that. So this is going to be Shadow Sigil into Marionette Cross. And after the first card, I thought the opponent was going to play some Praxis aggro kind of deck. But after the second one, this is an FTJ Control, aka Creation Control, aka Stoplight Control. That's the name Gibbon taught me. Alright, Strategize, draw 2, put something to the bottom. And the card we're putting to the bottom is one of our power sources. And that's that. And Felon Insignia and attacking for 5. Now, the funniest thing here is I know FTJ players are running Sabertooth Pride Leaders, but this hand includes a Transpose. And a Transpose gives us Face Sieges, which means this Marionette Cross is not going to die to Sabertooth Pride Leader. And that is something I had at in the back of my head all the time playing this game. So this is another piece of power. We can turn that huge 5/6 into Seed, into an 0/2, and attack our 5/5, 5/5. And we want to deal as much damage as possible. Opponent is probably going to be playing a ton of spells. So Transpose for Silverblade Menace Lethal is still probably going to be a thing. And of the little Seed comes a nerfed Nahid's Distillation. And I could go for a Transpose right now, but I opted not to. I opted to surprise the opponent. That is also why I just keep attacking. And I want to play the non-depleted source, obviously, and Tazbo as well. And yeah. This is make or break now. Opponent is down to 9. And we have 2 units that almost threaten lethal. Yes, that's the correct way to pronounce words. Calebovitsch. And what are you gonna do? Or what are you gonna do? Also remember, Ambush cannot answer to spells being played, so they don't do anything, and we want to, for example, Transpose right now to leave some, to leave more power up for our turn. We could be doing exactly that, and they cannot respond with Kitty. And here they market it for something, and we can start our turn. Blight Moth doesn't do much for us here. So instead, I'm just gonna attack with both. They went for Desert Marshal, silencing Tazbo. And here's the question. No. That is the answer. They are chumping both. They are still at 9. And I want to play Wisdom of the Elders main so that I know if I can play stuff out or not. Crest of Cunning, strategize, yes. I'm not going to play Blight Moths because they could be They could just play Shinra Speaks off of that 2-3 that they could have gotten from their market with the 2-3. And I'm just waiting for Transpose to be lethal. Creation Chant getting decimated is, well, is promising, at least, at the very least. And that means that they are probably desperately looking for a card, for an answer to the problems I am presenting them with. And they pass the turn, which makes me think, okay, is it finally kitty time? It could be finally kitty time. So I opted to go for Crest. Seat to the bottom. I could play Strategize before the attack. I mean, I could get something better here as well. Turn to Seat and Icaria. So Blightmouth, sorry, you're just... you've met your match, you've met better cards. And here is where opponent actually plays Sabertooth Pride Leader. They could gain health, but they instead opt to go for the cross, obviously. So I play Transpose, and just in case, I already go for the lethal card in Silverblade Menace. I mean lethal, it could be lethal. And, well, opponent is playing 3 damage to Tazbu in response. I have no idea if they could do it in a way that the effect of Kitty goes on the stack. I, in the response, gain Aegis. If I have the Aegis, can they still play Seer to get the Aegis off, so they can use the Kitty's ability or not? I had no idea, but it turns out the opponent went for Tazbu, opening themselves up because they didn't chump block the 5/5. So I had the Silverblade Menace lethal. That's a lot of explaining, so let's get back on top and talk about the deck some more. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope those games satisfied you more than they satisfied me. Once again, the end result in Spring Championships and Throne for me were 10 wins, 5 losses with very low tiebreakers, me ending up in place number 70, and that is unfortunately not in the top 64 last I checked. So yes, that was the end of my journey through Spring Championships. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and my explanation of the deck and looking at those games. And I believe it was 4 out of 4 Silverblade Menace lethal, which means I could just be playing the main deck, right? Right. I mean, Fel Mid right now is an archetype that is just brimming with possibilities, with possible cards to include in the main deck, in the market, types of market, etc., etc. So you can really pick and choose what you want to be playing here. You could go for Rindras, you could go for Aramot 3s, you could go for Icaria First Reaper and Tazbu the Forbidden, or you could go for the Felrog version that I've seen running around as well. I mean, it is up to you, and it is up to the cards that you have or do not have as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you did enjoy the video and would like to show some support, remember to subscribe here on this channel. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Calebovitsch out.